投资，国内专业的互联网理财平台，收益超银行活期35倍，已为10万用户赚取收益超1300万。烂投资，理财新选择。
中国人民的老朋友，美国前国务卿基辛格近日再度访华。作为现代国际关系现实主义理论的倡导者和实践者，基辛格经营外交数十年，特别是在1969年至1977年间，他先后出任尼克松总统的国家安全顾问、国务卿以及继任者福特总统的国务卿，成为上世纪70年代美国主要外交政策的决策者和执行者。从美苏关系缓和到历史性的推动与中国人民共和国的往来，以及签订旨在结束越战的巴黎和平协定，都成为基辛格外交事业的华彩乐章。基辛格曾到访中国近100次，同毛泽东以来的中国主要领导人都有过接触。在此次与北京接受财新传媒总编辑胡舒立和财新主编王朔专访的前一天，他刚刚获得中国最高领导人习近平的接见，并与其共进晚餐。
You know all the Chinese leaders since now. What's your impression about President Xi, and how do you assess his foreign policy against the evolution of China's strategic change?
The President Xi has undertaken an enormous task. He is attempting and succeeding in transforming a nation of over 1 billion people and to change patterns that have been established for many generations, and to do this at a time when there is also a change of population from the countryside to the cities, and when the world economy is becoming more complex. So I think that President Xi will be recorded in history as a leader who's brought about very major changes, some of the most dramatic changes in Chinese history.
What kind of expectation do you predict about his next visit to the United States in the coming September?
Well, this will be the first state visit of President Xi to the United States. And he's coming in a period when the United States is preparing for an election next year. So it contributes enormously to the continuity of Chinese-American relations to see that the foreign policy that has already existed for a number of, I think, 9 presidential terms, is now being carried on towards the end of the current administration, and I'm sure will be supported in the new administration. Also, Americans have not really had an opportunity to hear an explanation from the top Chinese leader about the reform program and the reform and development of the country. And I'm very confident that President Xi, when he comes to the United States, will present a picture of what is going on in China that will be very significant.
在历史上的国际关系中，守成大国与新兴国家难以避免冲突，成为国际冲突的重要根源。作为20世纪后半叶最大事件之一的中国崛起，是否会落入同一陷阱？此外，中国在积极参与世界银行、国际货币基金组织等国际经济秩序之外，也开始通过领衔发起金砖国家银行、稳定基金和亚洲基础设施投资银行等，致力于打造新的国际多边金融和经济机构。 这会不会遭到美方的质疑？就此，基辛格给出了他的答案。
China's rise, will it be a linear process or with up and downs?
Well, historically, a rise has always had some ups and downs. China, when I remember China in 1971, and if anyone had shown me a picture of what Beijing looks like and said in 25 years Beijing will look like this, I would have said that's absolutely impossible. But up to now, the rise of China has been, to all purposes, uninterrupted. That has never happened before for such a long period of time. So it is possible that there are some down periods. But when one looks at the evolution of China in the last 30 to 40 years, I think the long-term trend will be upward, and especially this will be so if the reforms that are now being undertaken are carried through.
I just finished reading it. It's very good, excellent. And in this book, you said that the United States and China should learn hard lessons from the First World War. So in your mind, what are the lessons to be learned?
The lessons are that countries can drift into a conflict by doing things that look perfectly reasonable on a day-to-day basis, and then suddenly find themselves in a position where they don't know anymore how to extricate themselves. I believe that none of the leaders who started the First World War would have done so had they known what the end would look like. And so I think that China and the United States have to be careful not to get into situations where even when they act reasonably, they create a tension that over a period of time will be difficult to manage.
So both countries should avoid losing the flexibility and change the situation into a more rigid situation.
Well, both should remember that whatever their differences, their common interests are greater. And so that when issues arise, they should be dealt with by compromise and without pressure. And that they should be settled on the basis of remembering that the need for peace is greater than the immediate tension.
Yeah. Also in your book, you said that, quote, concepts of partnership need to become paradoxically elements of the modern balance of power, unquote. So why this paradox is necessary, and what both countries' leaders must do to manage this paradox successfully?
It's understandable that China wants to keep foreigners from approaching its borders, and that it therefore undertakes a defense effort to that end. And one can particularly understand it in the light of China's history. It's also understandable that the United States does not want any region dominated by a superpower. So this creates a certain balance. On the other hand, the two elements in that balance, namely China and the United States, also have the need for cooperation, as has been shown in the agreement on climate control, and as I'm sure on President Xi's forthcoming visit to the United States will lead to other positive understanding. So both of these tendencies have to go on side by side.
Today, China, besides seeking larger influence in this existing international system, China also starts to create a new multilateral financial institutions and economic institutions parallel to the World Bank and IMF. So, what are the strategic implications of this new approach?
It isn't clear yet, and there's a dialogue still going on between the United States and other countries and China. Some people in the United States interpret it as an attempt to create an alternative financial system to the existing financial system, and maybe ultimately to replace it. I say let history decide. There is a need for development, and there's a need for capital for development. And there must be a way of dividing the responsibilities of these institutions. We will see what happens later. I don't think any country can create an international system by itself, and I'm sure Chinese leaders will realize that.
There is a Chinese man who has achieved the franchise license to build a canal in Nicaragua. It will become a concern to the United States strategically.
There are a lot of people that say whenever China does something in Africa and or Latin America, that it's damaging to us. That's a canal from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Why should that be damaging to the United States? The relation between China and the United States will be determined by the purposes of their leaders and the ability of the leaders to deal with each other. And we ought to understand, both of us, we are now great countries. We will both operate around the world. We will be some places side by side, some places not side by side. I don't think that is the issue. And if China wants to spend resources on building a canal in Nicaragua and doesn't make it a naval base, which is inconceivable, why should that concern me?
You helped creating the first triangle of America, China, and Russia in 1970s. Now, is there another triangular game being played again? And do you worry that China and Russia will work together to challenge the United States?
In the evolution of China, Russia, and the United States, when I was in office, our theory was we would have good relations with both countries, and we would not choose in terms of good relations. We made it very clear that we had a strong interest in a peaceful solution between China and Russia, and China knew that we would not that we would oppose a Russian attack on China. In the present situation, there is no particular threat of war between any of the three countries that we are talking about. Russia is undergoing, and in part has created, a crisis in Europe, and as a result it has moved closer to China. This does not damage the United States, and I cannot conceive that China and Russia will engage in a formal alliance. So we will have to take the issues as they arise. And so far, most of the relations have concerned energy supply and other matters that do not directly affect the United States.
当今世界两大主题和平与发展，如今都遭到相当大程度的考验。就和平而言，乌克兰危机不止，伊斯兰国做大，发达国家内生恐怖分子威胁，伊朗核问题未解，都严重挑战世界的和平。在发展端， 人类能否削减温室气体的排放，遏制包括埃博拉在内的流行性疾病的扩散，国家间和国家内部的贫富差距扩大，以及腐败问题的猖獗和诸多国家结构改革动力的缺失，也令发展前景蒙上阴影。
Do you see now there any possible Cold War emerging from Ukraine crisis?
I thought a year ago, and I think today, that the Ukraine crisis should be settled peacefully and should be settled by a negotiation. And the basic issue has been whether Ukraine should be part of a military alliance or whether it should belong to a Russian sphere of military influence. And my view has been that Ukraine should be in neither camp, that it should be a meeting place and not an outpost. And if that advice had been taken, I think a peaceful solution would have occurred. I believe that this is what should still be done. And a continuation of conflict will weaken every party.
What are the future road for the Islam world as a whole?
ISIS is a symbol of a theocratic world. How it is defeated depends on a number of things. One, how outside countries react. But secondly, how the Muslim populations react, because they are the ones that are directly affected. And in the Middle East, it should not be that difficult to get a grouping of Muslim nations to fight against the ISIS. But it has the additional complication that ISIS is a Sunni phenomenon. So if we use Shia forces to defeat ISIS, then we are, in a way, in the long term, making the conflict even more complicated.
And this brings us to the question of the rivalry between the Iran and Saudi Arabia. Talk about Iran. How to deal with the Iran nuclear crisis?
Well, in the administration of President Nixon, we were very friendly with Iran when the Shah was there. And this was true also in previous administrations. If Iran conducts itself as a national state with recognized borders, it can make a great contribution to international order and peace. It has its own distinct culture. It is the only country conquered by Islam at the beginning that did not adopt Arabic as a language and retained its own identity. The problem with Iran is when it becomes an imperial power, either in the sense of a Shia domination of the world, or in the sense of the history of the Persian Empire, which went from even parts of current China across all of North Africa. So that is the challenge that is posed by Iran. And the problem is, can Iran behave like a national state? If it does, good relations between it and the rest of the world, and especially with America, will be almost automatic.
How social media changed the game of international politics?
I hate to embarrass myself, but I don't use social media. And I don't have the need to tell everybody everything that I'm doing. But certainly social networks have totally changed, have changed the world. They've created a degree of interconnection between people that didn't exist. But they have also produced a self-consciousness where when you are so dependent on the approval of other people, how confident are you in your own judgment? And that is one of the challenges of our time.
And after Snowden, it seems everything that can be leaked will be leaked. So how is your favorite quiet diplomacy still possible in this brave new world?
There are two levels of quiet diplomacy. One, keeping your objective secret. And secondly, keeping your conduct secret. Sometimes it is necessary to keep something secret. For example, when we accepted the invitation of the Chinese leadership to come here, we thought it was best to do it secretly. Why? Because if we had done it publicly, we would have had to give so many assurances when we didn't know about the outcome. And the Chinese then would have had to explain their purposes. So we thought it was best for leaders to meet, come to an understanding of the direction in which they were going to go, and then to publish it. And we have published, with the approval of the Chinese, the records of the conversation so that everybody knows what was done. But for the moment, for that year in which we established contact, and when we didn't know each other, we thought it was best to keep it secret. And I still think that there are important things that need to be done that way.
2015年3月23日凌晨3时18分，新加坡开国总理李光耀逝世，享年91岁。李光耀与基辛格同年出生，基辛格比李光耀大几个月，他们是相识多年的老友。在此次接受财新专访时，李光耀以处评为之际，基辛格则动容地谈起了他眼中的李光耀，以及后李光耀时代新加坡的发展。
I used to interview Mr. Li Guangyao in Singapore 8 years ago. Right now, he is hospitalized. And what would you say about his accomplishments?
Lee Kuan Yew is one of the great men of our period. He took a rundown seaport and built a country based on his belief in the intellectual ability of his largely Chinese population. And he established a competitive advantage based on the discipline and intelligence of his society. And he has acted, in addition, as a conscience all over the world. It is an amazing performance that the mayor of a middle-sized town has had such an influence around the world. And he is a great man and a good friend of mine.
What will a post-Lee Singapore look like?
He has created a modern society. He has the per capita income when he came in was $600 a year. It is now over $40,000 a year. He has done it with discipline and perhaps considered excessive by Western countries. But I think it will gradually evolve into a more participatory country. And he is one of the men who've created a society that can continue to grow and which will continue to be inspired by him.